appreciate you taking the time out to come on to this podcast, Optimize Your Body. So thank you very much. How are you doing today anyway, Lynn?
So good. Yeah, it's a good day here in Sydney and bright, beautiful.
It's beautiful, isn't it? But obviously I've never met you, so I've known you for like 5 minutes, right? So do you feel really awkward right now?
I thought I would. I'm like, who's a stranger? No, it's good to have you here.
All good.
Yeah.
That's great. So yeah, I was just going to see if you could just mention to the listeners or give the listeners a bit more of an insight into your background and your story, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So I am a dietitian and a nutritionist. I've been doing this for about 6 or 7 years now. But, I used to really struggle with food. So back when I was probably around 5, I think it's the first time I realized that I was bigger than some of the other girls in ballet class. And then by the time I got to when I was 10, then I started dieting. So I would basically steal my mum's calorie counter and try and count calories and restrict how much I was eating. I have two older brothers, so it was always about trying to... I couldn't keep up with them. I had to try and reduce my portions and, be the girl and eat what girls are meant to eat. And but I was so hungry. I remember being hungry all the time as a kid because I was constantly trying to look a certain way. So really, I just exercised a lot more. I ate a little bit less. And it didn't take long before I ended up binge eating. So the binge eating caught me by surprise. It's not something I ever spoke about with anyone. I was binge eating for 10 years without ever anyone telling me what it was or me feeling like I was completely alone in it. So I would restrict all day, come home from school, binge in the afternoon when no one was home or, sneak food wherever I could. And it got to this point where it was just terrible. I was desperate to lose weight and I just kept gaining weight. And I felt so out of control. And I think, had you looked at me on the street, you would have thought that's someone who doesn't care. And yet the opposite was so true. I was someone who was so obsessed, so dedicated to losing weight and eating well, and yet it felt like my body was kind of failing me. So that was a really interesting, there was a turning point when I got to 21. I just graduated as a dietitian. The common advice at the time was to eat less, here's a meal plan, go on a diet, and I thought, you know what, this is bullshit. I'm not doing this. There's no way that I'm going to tell people what to eat, when to eat it. It's not going to work. It never worked for me. No. So I decided I need to stop dieting. I thought I'm not going to keep gaining more weight if I stop dieting. I was already 20 kilograms over what I was meant to be at that point.
And what point was this? How old are you roughly?
I'm 21. 21 at this point. Just graduated.
It's a very tender age, that, isn't it?
Tender age.
21, young girl living in Sydney. It's like, oof. Pressure's on.
Yeah, so I knew that something had to give. I couldn't keep going like this. I was like, what do I have to lose? So at that point, I was like, listen, I'm losing the battle. I just need to stop dieting completely. Stop dieting, gave it up, and started doing something called intuitive eating, which is, listening to your hunger. Eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full. As simple as that. And for me, going from all these rules, like don't have carbs after a certain time, and eat breakfast, and have 6 more meals a day to keep your metabolism going from all of that stuff to just eat when you're hungry was mind-blowingly simple, and it was the start of where I am now, which is lost 20 kilograms over the last 5 years. Wow. So what you're going to know is that's really slow weight loss.
It is.
It's not like if I hopped on the scale every single day and tried to weigh that weight loss, I would have gotten so disappointed because I wouldn't have seen the scale moving. But because I stopped trying to lose weight and I just started focusing on being healthy, it happened, and here I am. It's not something I don't nowadays. I don't worry about the number on the scale or whatever size pants I'm wearing. It's all good.
Exactly.
And now I'm so much happier and healthier, and I don't go to bed at night worrying about what I ate. It's like not a thought.
That's it.
I don't obsess about what's my next meal. I don't think about food as much as everyone thinks I should. Food's just about pleasure for me, and I eat healthy because it makes me feel good, not because I want to lose weight or look good. Right?
That's it. But on the other hand, when you said pleasure, a lot of people tend to eat for the mouth pleasure, right? For the emotions. Obviously, the emotional attachment is completely normal for us to be attached to food, right? It's a survival mechanism. But what I've learned is not really like, I don't think about it. Like you said, Dan, I don't really think about, I need food, because I know I could go days, weeks without food, right? But that's what I've learned from like intermittent fasting and those tools I brought in along the way. But it's just eating when you're hungry, like you said. So when you get to a level where you're eating intuitively, because we have these built-in signals in our bodies, right, which tell us when we need food, and it's all built into us. But the thing is, like, our brains are being kind of hijacked, right? Because, you go to the supermarket, for example. I've said this on numerous podcasts, but you go to the supermarket and like 90% of the stuff in there is processed in one way or another, isn't it? Or it's just bad, for example, meats and stuff like that is bad quality, unless you can get really good quality grass-fed meat from, a source you trust. Or any, that goes for any food, and even vegetables and stuff, you just really don't know where you're getting. But where I was going with that is, most of us have been into the habit of eating foods which are processed, essentially, but most of us don't really realise we're doing it, and we don't know, because our brains are kind of tuned into, or like I said, almost like hijacked. The signals are just being conflicted, so we don't know. So most people, like I come across, for example, a lot of people actually think they're eating healthy, and then, like I mentioned to you then off air, I sometimes get people to track what they're having, just so I can see what's going in and out and make them more self-aware. And the second they start realising like how much sugar they're having, how much hidden sugar is in certain foods, and not to mention artificial sweeteners as well, which I have had really bad. Like, basically, let's go back about 2 or 3 years. I used to take loads of supplements.
Yeah.
On that note, do you take any supplements? Like any? No. All whole foods.
Nothing.
Same. There we are. I'm glad you said that.
Cool, man.
Cool. Spot on that one. Awesome. No, but I used to promote supplements and stuff when I wasn't really educated, and I used to promote it to people as well. Like, this is when I just really didn't know what I was doing. Have this protein bar, have that. Make sure you hit enough protein and stuff like that. I was completely brainwashed.
Protein obsessed. Really.
Yeah, protein obsessed. Like it's some sort of magic, like macronutrient or something, isn't it? It's crazy. So yeah.
What you're saying is so spot on. I feel like from a really early age, you're programmed to be obsessed with food, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you go to a birthday party and you get to celebrate with food. You have you go to a funeral when you're older and everyone mourns and they share food. You catch up with friends. You go for breakfast. You go for coffee. You go for lunch. Your entire life, our entire social lives are based around food. Let alone, as I said, you go to the supermarket and you're inundated.
Yeah, for sure.
So unless you're conscious and you're going, I want to eat healthy, you're kind of, if you go along with the flow, you're not going to eat healthy.
Exactly.
And I think this is the problem we have. We kind of go, how do we find the balance between, hey, how do I not get obsessed with trying to manage every single gram of sugar that's going in my body, but at the same time have freedom and flexibility with what I'm eating so that I can be happy and this is a challenge. This is health to me. It's just like that boundary between the obsession and the free flow of it all. The intuition, as you said.
For sure, yeah. And you being obviously, as knowledgeable as you are, and the level you've got to now from the journey you've been on and what you've experienced in the past, and the fact that obviously you're a dietitian. Are there any particular, I know everyone's completely different and there's so many individual variances, right, from person to person, but is there any kind of methods or any kind of staple actions you have in place to help people who, because you kind of specialise in a sense with, and help people who struggle with eating disorders and binge eating kind of thing. Is there anything you have in place which you find really effective in terms of helping people?
Yeah, there's a few key things here, right? So, number one, if your environment is set up to make you eat healthy, you're going to eat healthy. Like, if I have my countertop right now, if I walk past and I've got my chocolate here, it doesn't matter how good my willpower is, I'm still going to go want to eat it. It's right in front of me.
Human nature, isn't it? Yeah.
Human nature. So if my kitchen is helping me be healthy, then that's the most important thing. There's so many people go, I struggle to eat healthy, and then it gets to like 10 p.m. and all I want to do is eat lots of chocolate. Well, the chocolate's obviously in your kitchen and it's really easily accessible, and that's how you're probably eating it. So first thing you can do is just kind of create a really healthy kitchen environment. So meal prep, I'm not obsessive about meal prep. You got to know, I'll just roast 2 to 3 trays of veggies, because if I come home and I'm hungry, there's no way I'm going to make myself something from scratch.
No.
I'm just not. I'm
really.
Hungry.
Exactly.
At that point, I want something quick.
Yeah.
And cereal and bread, those options are quick.
Yeah.
So
but they're not in the house, are they?
No, well, then they're not really.
No.
So I got to go for more things like veggies and stuff. That's just
same.
ready, it's cooked, prepped, ready to go. Yum, it's right there. And
exactly.
suddenly it becomes delicious. So
yeah.
Just sorting through your kitchen and going, all right, what do I actually binge on? There's some trigger food. So a lot of the things that I mentioned, so cereal, bread, peanut butter. 3 primary
Peanut butter, I didn't see that one coming. Yeah, okay.
That's a massive binge food.
Huge, yeah. I don't buy it anymore.
What all those foods have in common is that they're all healthy.
Yeah.
They're not, they're not junk food.
Yeah.
But
Everyone overeats them.
Everyone overeats them because they're delicious, they're quick, they give you a very high dose of satisfaction as soon as you have them. So the challenge there is to go, do I have to cut out bread, cereals, and peanut butter from my life? No, I do say no there, you don't have to do that. But at the time being, if you are currently binge eating a lot, just become really mindful of those foods.
Yeah.
If you have a thing with peanut butter, don't buy peanut butter for the house for the time being, but when you're at a cafe, go and order peanut butter. Like, actively go and get that food. Like, if you love bread, go get a sandwich for lunch, rather than getting it at home. It doesn't mean that you're not allowed to have it. You absolutely need to give yourself permission to have it, but you don't need to facilitate a binge. So, number one thing is, like, create a really healthy environment. Number two thing, don't eat in front of the TV. It's like the simplest thing, right? Like, this is number one thing, but everyone does it.
Wow, I never thought of that one.
So what happens is when you eat in front of the TV, you program your body to get hungry when you sit down and watch your favorite TV show. So you might be 10 minutes into your show and suddenly your brain triggers and goes, oh, it's time to eat. I normally always eat when I watch TV.
We associate it with that, don't we? Yeah, like the cinema, isn't it?
Totally.
The cinema's a nightmare for people, isn't it?
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
It's like Pavlov's dogs. Have you heard about that?
Kind of.
Russian scientist, 1800s, did this study. Basically found that he had all these dogs, like too many dogs, let's be honest. But he'd basically ring a bell before he fed the dogs. So the dogs would come running, they know it's lunch, it's dinner time. Soon enough, what would happen is he measured the dogs and he'd ring the bell and there wouldn't be any food, no smells or anything. The dogs would start salivating, which is the first step of digestion. So already the dogs had associated the sound of the bell meant that it was food time. And this is basically what you do when you watch TV. You turn on the TV, now your body's going ding, 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 food time. So it's very hard to stop eating when you are watching TV, because as long as you're watching TV, that bell is ringing, telling you to eat and eat. And you're mindless, because you're watching something else, you're disconnected, and it can be a very numbing experience. And often with emotional eating, what we're trying to do is numb out whatever's happening, right? Like, this is my safe zone, I'll deal with all of that other shit later, but here I am right now. Exactly. So it's a really simple thing. It's not easy. Like, I don't think stopping eating when you're watching TV is easy, but it's a decision. So yeah, it's such a simple one that everyone can do if you're an emotional eater. Just suss that out. That's
a great tip. Yeah, no, and I can relate to the thing you were saying about vegetables. That is my number one go-to, as I said earlier. Preparing the veg, having enough there, a variety of different veg, primarily green veg, but a mixture, and they're in the fridge ready.
Got to be ready.
Exactly, got to be ready.
Yeah, one of the things I used to do when I was like struggling with my weight and binge eating is I would create a list of the things I wasn't allowed to eat, right? And so all that would happen is I'd obsess about them. Okay, can't eat this, can't eat that, can't eat this. My list was massive. It was like never ending. And then I couldn't stop thinking about these things that I wanted to eat. Yeah. Nowadays, what I do is something called crowding. So instead of thinking about what I can't eat, it's about what can I eat, right? The question changes. So what should I be filling up on? And suddenly I go, all right, I need to get 5 serves of veg a day. When you start to focus on getting 5 serves of veg a day, you naturally fill up on more veggies and you just crowd out the other stuff. So it's not even a matter of, oh, I'm not allowed to have bread, which you are, but it's a matter of, oh, I have to have 5 serves of veggies. And if I go for that option, I'm not going to get there. Therefore, I'll go for the veggies. Naturally, you're just going to get a little bit healthier and not have that push-pull, obsession, restriction kind of mentality. Yeah.
That's it.
Simple.
Okay, that was amazing. But yeah, that's it. With the vegetables as well, obviously high in fibre, or like an abundance of different nutrients, right? So satiety, I mean, you're actually, like you said, you're not going to be thinking about it. If you're saying to yourself, even if, for example, I say to some clients as a starting point, to start off having just 2 servings of vegetables every day. That's all I get them to change with their nutrition. Nothing else whatsoever. Just do that. And just by doing that is a game changer when they're consistent with that, because they find they're not craving these other foods as much then. So
health is about consistency. It's not about doing something perfect but only maintaining that for a week. Like, that's pointless. If you can just add 1 more serve of veggies or one more serve of fruit, you're nailing it. So this is something that's interesting about fibre. So I'm super pro fibre because I don't think we get enough fibre in our diet. So veggies are super high in fibre. Fruit, the skin, and legumes and whole grains are loaded with fibre. So just an example. So you've got a muesli bar and you've got a brownie, and they both have the exact same number of calories, right? But the muesli bar is loaded with fibre, right? Like, let's say it's got heaps. When you eat the muesli bar versus when you eat the brownie, your body will actually absorb a quarter less calories. just because you had to process, the body had to process through all the fiber. So that's something that's not actually, you know, when you look at calories, that's never on the calories. They give you the total calories, not the actual absorbable calories. So I think people, you know, they miss out on fiber. Fiber is just this kind of, I don't use the word magical, but like it's
going to give you more sustained energy, isn't it?
Pretty damn cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Sustained energy, just kind of help you feel full.
For sure.
Help you feel good, keep your gut healthy. When your gut's healthy, your brain feels better,
Definitely, yeah.
you have more energy. It's a win-win.
I know, and there's so many different types of fibre as well, isn't there? So it's like, there's a variety of different foods you can have which contain fibre, but yeah, that's interesting because maybe that's somewhere along the line, you know, my success rate is sometimes not very good because obviously you sometimes forget the level you've got to, right? So you were saying then, for example, someone who's eating rubbish food, so they're having like brownies and they're having processed junk food most days, will you sometimes give them an alternative and will you sometimes promote? Because I know obviously for me and you, like a muesli bar, we know it's not ideal, right? Because it's still going to be processed one way or another and there's going to be like a list of ingredients in there, right? But you will use alternatives like that as a starting point for people, yeah? So you'll do that to help progress them forward.
I think you've got to be a realist, right?
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Like if I could give you some like amazing idea of what you should be eating, but if it's not going to happen, then what's the point?
Exactly.
So I'm always happy to kind of go, all right, well, if you are actually going to do this, this is a stepping stone. The biggest problem people have when it comes to nutrition is trying to do too much too soon, right? So you don't need to start here and get here, but you just need to take one more step. And if it means you go for a muesli bar instead of a brownie, you're winning.
Exactly.
You're winning at life.
Progress.
It's amazing, and that's good. And then when you get to a point where you want to reassess and you want to take it to the next level, take it to the next level.
Yeah.
But you know, you don't need to go from brownie to green smoothie overnight. You know.
That's it, exactly. Yeah. And it's just to make it sustainable, isn't it? It's not like you said then. It's not realistic if you're going to go from one extreme to another straight away. And I think this is one of the major issues in the fitness and nutrition industry. So that's why, you know, I come to interview you because a like-minded person who's got all these qualifications that I haven't got either. So you're a bit of a step ahead, but I want to learn from you a bit as well. I wish I brought my notepad actually, but there we go. No, but I was just saying about, you know, it's always, you know, extremes, right? So with nutrition, fitness, people go onto social media, for example, they're looking for advice, looking for help, and they're just bombarded with all this information, and most of it is not, you know, it's for people who are looking to benefit their pockets. A lot of the time they're not really at the level you're at, for example, where they have been through the journey you've been on, they're eating intuitively, and they're promoting this supplement, that supplement, and people are confused, and people are struggling, you know. And they'll get like a program, for example, like a training program from someone which is just like, you know, balls to wall type, high intensity, and then they're going to be on one of these diet plans, and at the same time, right? So they've gone from being like super, you know, completely off the rails to, boom, let's say, for example, CrossFit. I'm not a massive fan, right? But I'm just gonna bring it up. CrossFit's an example, you know, it's based on intensity. Let's hammer you. Let's really go to town on you. You know, obviously you're going to burn calories, you're going to probably lose body fat, and then they're on a strict diet. But for most, like I'm going to say as much as 90-95% of people, it's just not sustainable, and they end up rebounding at some point because they've applied too much stress to their body, and their body's just gone, nah, man, this is too much.
Too much
and then
too
they've gone
soon.
back into their old patterns,
Yeah, you're at a really high risk of injury as well at that point, because you haven't done any exercise, and now suddenly you're pummeling yourself.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing I see is the biggest issue is when people make healthy food really untasty. You know, like sad salads.
Yeah.
Like, I have no time for salads, right? Like, you know, like when you're having broccoli and chicken for every meal.
I've been there.
And it makes you sad, right?
I know, it literally does. Like, you've got a tear, like, streaming down your face as you're eating it, right?
Yeah, like you can't help. You are as sad as your meal is.
Yeah.
It is like so. For me, when people make healthy eating that boring and sad, you're gonna feel boring and sad, and it's just not sustainable. You can do that for a few weeks. You can do that for a few months, but at some point, you're gonna crack it.
100%.
So for me, the reason that I eat salads is not because I'm so enamored with how delicious vegetables are. Yeah, they're very yummy, but I eat them because of things like a salad dressing. So if you have to compromise a little and have a salad dressing, and it's going to make it taste freaking amazing, do it.
Yeah, that's it.
You know, it's these little things that are going to make you more consistent. So rather than going for perfection or this really high intensity, bring it down a notch and just aim for consistency. And then as you kind of get further and further along, you can kind of raise your level of consistency. But what we're not aiming for is, you know, if it ticks all the boxes and it makes you unhappy, that's not health.
Exactly.
You know, that's you got to enjoy the food that you eat, and if you're not, then it doesn't matter if you're having, you know, the most healthy food. It's not good for you.
Yeah, exactly. And I was a sucker for that before as well, because obviously all the bodybuilding and stuff, competitions I've done like 8 competitions. And when I first started out, I knew pretty much nothing about nutrition. And then, you know, to get shredded, as we say, for shows, I had like an old school bodybuilder give me a diet plan. And to be fair, like when it comes to bodybuilders, he was one of the more knowledgeable ones, but it was still extremely restrictive, right? So it was like, you know, like you said then, chicken and broccoli every meal, pretty much, right? Maybe a bit of sweet potato and some salmon if I'm lucky, right? And that was it. And for like maybe, I don't know, 8 weeks leading up to a show, that is all I would eat, because that's all he knew from the competitions he's done or wherever.
How'd you feel? How'd you feel eating that?
Horrific. Yeah, terrible. And it was just, like you said then, like obviously when you're prepping for a competition, it's at a different level to someone who's just looking to maybe lose a bit of body fat and get healthy. But at the same time, it's exactly the same concept, right? It's restricted eating, as you've brushed over many times. And I looked at your article earlier, so we'll come to that a bit more later. But yeah, restrictive eating. So chicken and broccoli every meal, eating the same foods. The world's a very sad, lonely, horrible place, right, when you're doing that. So, as you said
you
then...
can't go out with friends. Like,
no,
you can't, because you can't tick the boxes when you're out with friends.
For sure.
And then if you do ruin it, you feel guilty and shit, and then you feel like you need to try and counteract what you've just eaten by being even more good.
Yeah.
And then you get yourself into the cycle of the binge eating. So that is exactly how the cause of binge eating is dieting.
Definitely.
And these restrictions, and then you spiral out of control. I mean, at the beginning you binge maybe once a week.
Yeah.
And then that becomes every few days, and then it's every day, then it's multiple times a day.
Exactly.
And when you get to that point, you need to stop and think, all right, I'm binging all the time now. Something needs to stop.
That's it.
And almost if you need to reduce the intensity so that you stop binging, great, you win.
Yeah,
You're
that's
winning,
it.
you know?
Yeah.
So I'm all about making that little compromise.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, and that's what it was for me. It was like, so even when this is the problem, see, so I know, you know how popular it is now, the bodybuilding world, you know, bikini models and men's physique and whatnot. Huge. Every Tom, Dick and Harry's having a go at it now, right? So, hats off to them, but the only issue is the aftermath. So I've prepped a few people for comps and stuff now, and I've got like one girl, for example, now I'm prepping, but I'm making sure that after the competition, just as important, if not more important, than the actual competition, what you have in place afterwards, right? So, luckily, she's already like at a high level, but I've met so many people and myself. So you said then, like for example, it'll be binge eating for 1 day in a week. So this is what happened, right? So I finished a competition. That's all said and done now, right? I've done 2 competitions in a row. I've come out of it, and then the following week after, it's been like a write-off. So I've been eating crap pretty much every day. The week after that, then it'd be like, right, I'm back on it now. You know, like I'm back on the diet. I don't even like that word anymore. Diet. Yeah, the bandwagon. Even the word diet.
It has the word die in it, so I think you...
Yeah, diet. Yeah, there we are. That's a good point, that is, actually. So yeah, and it would be like, this is the pattern. It would be Monday to Thursday, eating like restrictive, not realising at the time, thinking I was eating healthy, because I was having like chicken, sweet potato and broccoli again.
Right, like you think yourself it's healthy.
Yes,
right? Where is
exactly.
this line? You go, obsession is, no, not healthy. Okay, go on.
And then basically what would happen then is like I would just about get to like a Friday, I get to like a Friday afternoon, I would eat like one rubbish thing, and that will spiral into like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and I'm talking like dangerous binge eating, where I'd be eating like Domino's, Ben Jerry, like you name the worst kind of foods out there, and I was going at it.
And there's no satiation point. So when you actually hit into binge eating, so it's unlike when you have a healthy relationship with food. If you eat a lot of food, you get to a point where you go, oh, I feel physically ill.
Yes.
I feel sick. When you're in binge eating mode, so what you need to understand is it is like a primal switch that your brain goes into, where it's like, I'm protecting you right now. You need as much calories as you can get, because I don't trust you. I don't trust that you can feed yourself right now. Therefore, it basically switches off your hormones that tell you that you've had enough to eat.
Yeah, like leptin. Is that
yeah, exactly. So leptin gets like muted, so you can actually just keep eating and keep eating and keep eating insane amounts of food that you would never be able to eat if you actually had a healthy relationship with food. So the binges can be perpetual, like non-stop.
Yeah, relentless.
Grazing all day, and then you go to sleep at night and you hate yourself for doing it, and you wake up again, the cycle continues. And like, when does it get a break?
I know, it's destruction, isn't it? Mentally and physically.
Yeah. So, and this is so common. This is like so normal. And the thing is, no one talks about it. You know, binge eating is the most common eating disorder. So it's about 48% of people have binge eating disorder, about 3% have anorexia.
Okay, so 48% of people, like, is there any kind of like age, you mean just in general in like Australia? Or?
Oh, of people who have eating disorders. Right, it's just like that's the ratio of people who have eating disorders.
Right, 48%.
And you know how often you hear about people who have anorexia, right?
Yeah,
like this is the eating disorder we need to be careful of. Well, actually binge eating disorder is like, and most people don't know they have it.
No.
Most people have no idea.
Because they're so attached.
To be diagnosable with binge eating disorder, it's like you just need to be binging once a week for like a few months. Yeah. I know so many people who would already tick that box without even realizing that they're have an eating disorder.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know loads of people as well who have the same, like, it's almost like a bit, I would go as far to say it's an epidemic now, because the self-awareness just isn't, obviously we're in an obesity epidemic anyway, we're the worst state we've ever been in, right?
And we're in a dieting epidemic, right? Yeah. So we have these two worlds that are pushing against each other. The result is going to be binge eating.
Exactly.
And dieting doesn't actually make you lose weight. If you correlate when dieting was invented, right, with obesity statistics, they pretty much follow a very similar curve upwards. So it's almost like the minute we started telling people what to eat, when to eat it, we all started gaining weight, because just psychologically we're not programmed to be able to do it, which is why you need to be intuitive eating. It's like the only way. It's how people manage their weight before all this. It's the only way that we are going to be able to manage our weights.
Exactly. We're so on the same page here, because that is my message as well, and that is my goal. And actually, it's almost like a dream now. My dream is to build this online business and help hundreds of thousands of people. That's what I want to do.
Great.
Get to the level that I'm at now, which is an amazing place to be, the same place you're at now, where it's like it's no longer any stress involved with eating whatsoever.
So good.
You know?
Do you know, I never thought I'd get here. Like, I remember being like so deep and dark in it and going, I just want to be normal around food. Yeah. Like, honestly, I envy those people who can like get halfway through dessert and go, no, I'm good. I've had enough.
On that note, I read on your article actually, because you used to go out, I don't know whether this is true or not, but you used to go out with friends or whatever, and you'd have go out and have a meal, you'd all have desserts, you would say no to the dessert, and then you would go home and cook the town with yourself, right?
Totally, right? I'd be good, right? Like, I'd go out for dinner, I'd get the salad, I'd be good, they'd eat everything, I'd feel like jealous, but at the same time I feel like so good. I'd be like, ooh, look how good and restricted and controlled I am.
Thank you.
You eat the crap food, I'll be good.
Yeah, look how much they smell like that.
Totally.
Check me out.
Get home.
I'd be there as well.
Demolish the kitchen and go, oh, wow, that just happened. And that's just that's the cycle, because there's so much shame around binging, right? Like,
exactly.
And if you are not the right weight, then everyone loves to see you being good. Like no one. It's like,
it's almost like inspirational, isn't it? But it's not, though. It's not all about that, is it? It's about, like you said, eating intuitively.
Totally. We live in a world where it's more okay to have an eating disorder than it is to be overweight.
That's another valid point, actually. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, it's always endorsed, right? Like if you're overweight, maybe you should get an eating disorder. That's the message we get sold all the time.
Yeah, and
it's ridiculous.
Whilst you're saying that, I mean, do you ever I get this a lot. It's like I still get people say to me, how do you do it? Like, how do you eat that kind of food? It's like I'm doing it because I'm really trying to be strict. Like it's a constant battle. Like it used to be. Like it used to be like that. It used to be like, oh, just get these meals down me now. I look forward to the weekend, and then I wouldn't be like you just said. Then I was in that category where I had an eating disorder, basically, right? And that 48% of people who binge. And it would get to the weekend and I would just deny it all week. I would forget about the weekend before. And then it would just happen again. And this went on for like a year or two.
Yeah,
I don't know if I have done any long-term damage, maybe, but without realising, without being aware enough.
So I'm curious, right? So here you go. You get to a point where you go, what is happening? This is kind of like for your aha moment. And now you're here, right? Like you've climbed this kind of slope. So you get this point where you are intuitively eating. You don't have to think about what you're doing. It comes from you. It's a
Before
choice.
you go into that, sorry, just explain quickly what intuitive eating is, because I try and explain it to people, but they don't quite get it all the time.
Yeah, cool. So basically, when you were born, when you were a baby and you cried because you were hungry, your body was basically trying to manage your weight for you automatically. So you cry when you're hungry, and once you've had enough food, you're done. You can't actually force feed a toddler or a baby because they've had enough. So intuitive eating is just basically getting back to your appetite, getting back to your hunger cues. When your body says hungry, that's when you should be eating. Yeah. When your body tells you you've had enough food, that's when you stop eating.
Okay, connecting to the signals again, really, that we were born with, and that were survival components really for us, yeah.
So I mean, that's the only reason we have appetite.
Yeah,
the only reason we have appetite is to manage our weight and to give us enough energy. That's it. And yet we look externally to a diet to tell us how many times to eat, what we should be eating. You don't need to do any of that. You just need to check in because your appetite is going to tell you.
Yeah,
so if you have a big meal, you're going to feel really full.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? And that's your body's cue going, okay, maybe I don't need to eat for a while. So instead of eating at the next meal time because you think you should, just wait until you next get hungry. That might only be like several hours after when you thought you needed to eat. So it's about disconnecting from the rules and tuning back into your body.
Cool. I was just going to say on that note then, I'll forget about that now because I want you to go on to that point you were at now where you said you climb and you've got to that point now. You've climbed the mountain.
The question's for you. How did you get from this like moment where you're obsessive to being intuitive?
It's a very, very slow process,
Yes.
and it just all of a sudden it all clicks. And I'll tell you, one of the main ways I've done it is just by applying myself and actually learning, reading in between the lines, not listening to the bodybuilder world, because I could see most of these people were screwed up, right? And I was like, something's not right there. I'm going to stop with this 6 to 8 meals a day. So I used to think, right, I used to have like at least 6 meals a day. I used to have like, it makes me laugh looking back. I used to have like, even when I wasn't competing, like if I went anywhere, I couldn't go anywhere without my meals.
Yeah.
Right?
Carrying
so
your stuff around with you.
With an ice bag I paid like $300 for, which is just pointless really. But I used to have it, and I used to take my meals with me, and if I didn't eat my meals, I would literally think that muscle would fall off me. So it's obviously like there's a few different elements to this, right? It's like a body image thing as well, right?
Absolutely.
So when I was younger, I was always skinny, and then when I started lifting weights, I built muscle, and then obviously it's like a machine. What's the word? Like a male, alpha male kind of thing, isn't it? You know, you want to be muscular, you want to be exactly top dog, you want to be attracted to the opposite sex and all the rest of it. But yeah, for me it was a slow process. It was when I started learning and just really tuning into one particular podcast called Mind Pump, so I'm going to shout them out now. And I just started eating just basically varying my food more. That was the first step, actually, looking back. I've never actually had that question, varying my food, rotating my food more. Yeah, and I started realising, actually, I feel really good when I have not just broccoli, for example, right? I used to just eat broccoli and maybe some asparagus. I would have maybe about 10 to 15 different types of veg, right, in a week. And I just started feeling amazing. And then after, literally, it seemed like a few weeks, I started just, without thinking about it, just intuitively prepping more vegetables. Cool. That was the game changer. It sounds really silly, and everyone knows vegetables are good for you, but until you actually like you said, how important consistency is, eating them consistently just changes the game for you. But then it was just a gradual thing, and then I started, like I said, rotating my foods more, and then I started tracking, and that helped me a lot. So it can be hit and miss, as you say, because some people get obsessed with the numbers. But for me, it wasn't so much about the calories. It was just about, I wanted to know how much fibre I was having and protein and stuff. So I wanted to try and see, I wanted to have less protein, right? Because I was having a dangerous amount of protein. And I learned from the Mind Pump guys that that's not healthy. I was having like 3 times the amount I needed. Yeah. You can imagine I'm having like 6 meals a day. You know, there's a lump of meat in every single, you know, there's like chicken or there's some red meat or whatever in every single meal. So I was, and protein supplements as well. Overloaded. And that was one of the main, last thing I'm going to say, one of the most transformative things was cutting out supplements. I was sponsored by this company. I don't know, you know, you get these athletes saying they're sponsored, you get a free tub of protein a month. You're not, come on. It's not sponsored, is it?
Free stuff.
Yeah, and you get a box of protein bars. Come on. I used to have like, and there's nothing more processed than a protein shake right nowadays.
Nothing more processed than a protein shake.
You know what I mean?
What is it?
What is it?
I don't know what that is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're like, what's the flavour? It's like some crazy raspberry ripple flavour, and it's like it's derived from a cow, right? It's milk, and then it tastes like epic, you know. So
and all the artificial sweeteners, all the natural sweeteners, even that send your brain into craving all the sugars.
Definitely, and the gut as well. It alters your gut flora, right? Either way, doesn't it? Even if
you become so gassy, your gut's all over the place. It doesn't make you feel good.
No.
So I'm so glad that you got to that point, because I think there is an obsession with protein in the health world, and I think, you know, when you actually look at how much protein you don't need nearly as much protein as you think you do. You get a lot of it from plants.
It's all corruption, really. It's just for people that make money, and like the protein industry is a multi-billion-pound industry.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, $4 for a protein bar.
Yeah, exactly.
It's money-making business.
That's it, they don't care.
When you can get a banana for $1, you know, why would you not? You
exactly.
know?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it just totally. You know, I think that's why people think that healthy eating is really expensive as well. So, all right, getting off track. But that's fascinating to me, the way that you did it, because what I hear and how I can relate to my story is how gradually and slowly I needed to take that process.
It's the same to me, yeah.
To go from obsession to getting into a healthy mindset, you need to pick just one thing that you think you can change and start working from there. Not trying to change everything at the same time. So for me, it was like, I'm just going to listen to my hunger, and I'm going to eat what I feel like eating. And that for me was amazing. You know what I realised is that I actually didn't want to eat chocolate all the time.
No.
You know, like
that's it.
As soon as I gave myself the choice, then suddenly I was like relieved to hear that my body wanted to eat healthy.
Exactly.
And then slowly I began to crave eating healthy foods. But only when you give yourself the permission and you let go does that happen. As long as you tell yourself you have to, it'll always feel, it's a bit like being a rebellious child. You never really want to do it, do you?
Exactly. And I was going to say, then that's it, rebellious child. That's a good point. But yeah, and that's what you were saying earlier. It's like when you say to yourself, you know, you can't have something as well. I find there's different kinds of like vocabulary you can use, right? which I find quite effective. Is like, as soon as you say to yourself, you can't have something. Now, for me, there's something in me is where I can't. I don't know what it is. Something stemmed deep inside of me where if I can't do something, I really want to do it. Right. There's nothing worse than someone trying to clip my wings or saying I can't do something. You know. Trying to take my freedom away from me.
Just you wait.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. I think most of that probably comes from all the shows I've done actually, because obviously, you know, and all the different photo shoots I've done. But yeah, I've lost where I was going with that now, so I'm going to go back to the other point I had in my head. Forget about that. Connected with. Oh, sorry. Go on. What was I actually saying?
Well, I just wanted to talk because you mentioned before about the social media, and you're following these people who are getting endorsed by protein supplements, and a lot of people you're following at the time were themselves disordered in their relationship with food. So you're basically just following along this rabbit hole.
That's right.
And I think that's just about, let's talk about body image and talk about getting sucked in on social media and how you need to be so vigilant about who you follow. Like, honestly, who you allow into your social media feed is who you allow to change your brain
100%.
and to change who you are.
Absolutely.
And if you're scrolling and all you see, and like, do a test right now. Go on your like Instagram and scroll and see what are the first 10 images that come up. Because that screenshot is going to be what you start to believe and who you become.
Exactly.
So if it's people who are just ripped, if it's people who are obsessively counting macros and nutrients, you are going to become like that.
Exactly.
So for me, it's like, do a cult. Get really ferocious about your social media space. That is your territory. You can control what goes into your brain and make that into like the most positive space that you can. For me, it's like, as a female, if I scroll on social media and all I see is women who are models who are so beautiful and not eating, then that's obviously what I'm going to want to do. But instead, if I fill my feed with stuff that actually makes me be more balanced and healthier and feel good about myself, I'm gonna wake up in the morning and I'm gonna feel good about myself. Yeah,
exactly. That makes sense. And is it really necessary, for example, for anyone who's following someone when it comes to nutrition, like a dietitian like yourself, and someone who's healthy, basically, just a healthy individual, you've created balance in your life. Is it really necessary to follow like another 5, or let's just say another 10, 20, sometimes like hundreds of these other people? So you're getting all this, you're being like inundated with all this information coming from all different angles, and there's not many, like, I'm going to big you up a bit here, because there's not many real people out there like yourself. I mean, who are just like, literally, this is what it is, this is my journey, right? It's nothing like, there's nothing sugar-coated about it, really. It's just, try and make the food more enjoyable to eat, as you said earlier. But is it really, where I was going with that is it really necessary? And if you follow any, say, fitness models, for example, or you follow anyone who's really lean and you admire their physique, is it really necessary for you to follow 50 to 100 or hundreds of these insta-famous models? Is it really necessary? You're literally, it's just going to be flooded. Your feed is flooded with all these images of people, right? And like you said then, the majority of them, I know because I've met lots of them, right?
Yes.
They're not healthy individuals. They're quite the opposite, So it's...
And likewise, I mean, I'm more in the health nutritionist space. So many of the influencers out there do not have healthy relationships with food, and they're the ones who have the most influence, and it's ridiculous. I don't think it's about not subscribing to too many of them, but checking out the ratio of your feed, right? Like, if the ratio of your feed is you're scrolling and all you're seeing is this one message, you need to make a change there.
Yeah.
You need to get back in control of it. And
Definitely.
Also being super clear on how long you spend on social media.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it is going to suck you in.
It's going to suck you right in.
Spit you out 4 hours later.
Oh, for sure. I've even done a podcast episode on this. There's actually a really good book I forgot about on the last episode. I couldn't remember the name of the book. It's called Irresistible.
Cool.
It's amazing. It just tells you about this day and age. So the average person spends like at least 2.5 hours a day on social media.
Yes.
At least. And most of the time they're just scrolling and clicking. So
Have you heard of Moment app?
Well, yes. That's what they told. That's where I found out about the app. I know. I'm too afraid to use it.
No, you got to bite the bullet. I did it. I was 3.5 hours, and I was like, I am making a change. That is my life. So much of my life is being sucked in social media. And I'm letting my happiness be dictated by how perfect everyone else's life is.
Definitely, yeah.
So now I'm very clear. My phone does not sleep in my bed.
No.
My phone sleeps somewhere else. I have my own alarm clock. That's and then I exercise, and then I check social media. I'm not checking in social media before I've actually taken care of myself first.
Exactly, yeah. That's a good way to do it.
And then I've got to be very clear about how long I spend on it.
Yeah,
but the vortex will suck you in.
Yeah, definitely. I think I need to be more structured with that, because I've got my record on my phone. This is not like social media. 6 hours, over 6 hours in a day.
With what would you mean?
That like on my phone
in
one day and having clients as well, so that's pretty much every single minute outside of my clients I've been on my phone. And I've been doing some work. I've been doing nowhere near 6 hours, not even a fraction of that. So what was I doing? I couldn't even work out what I was doing on there, and I think I picked my phone up like 130 times or something. That was at my worst, and then I cut it down. So I monitored it and I went down to like, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours eventually, and then I just like didn't want to look at it, but I should go back on there and look at it every day now.
You got to bite the bullet.
Moments, get that app.
Get Moment app.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I have clinical anxiety. So I got diagnosed around the point when I was 21, and maybe this is why I had a bit of a moment where I was like, what is happening? Clinical anxiety, where I get really anxious about a lot of things. So for me, working on social media, dealing with all these emails that keep coming in, I need to be really clear about taking care of myself and making exercise a priority. So for me, exercise was always something I did to punish myself for eating.
Yes.
You know, for not looking good enough, and to try and change what I looked like so that I looked, good enough, more attractive.
So for all the wrong reasons, isn't it?
All the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And now, honestly, I only have one workout goal, and my only workout goal is to enjoy every exercise. If I'm not enjoying it, that is not healthy to me. That's a waste. So it can be high intensity, it can be low intensity, but it's about giving myself permission. If sometimes I just want to go for a walk, I'm just going to go for a walk. If I just want to go to yoga, dance, whatever. Sometimes I want to go for a run. But
do what makes you feel good, isn't it? That's one of the most important things.
What makes you feel good. And especially when having anxiety, to have that healthy relationship with exercise is crucial, because that is my drug. Exercise is my drug. It's what I need to keep me stable, to keep me happy. So I need a dose of it. So I've got to enjoy it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, anxiety is the biggest mental health issue for young people. So, like 25% of young people have anxiety or depression. So, it's just massive.
Exactly. And it's so common now, like, especially in guys, it's like 1 in 3. Well, I think the stats back home are like 1 in 3 guys.
3.
Yeah, 1 in 3.
That makes sense to me. And guys as well, when guys get it, gets a whole lot worse. Guys get depression, it's so much more severe when girls get it, because they're not talking about it, and no one's talking about it, making it sound like it's normal, when everyone actually does. Everyone's struggling and dealing with the same issues.
Definitely.
We've got to make a few changes.
For sure. And the thing is, like, it's almost like an experiment. Just going to go back to social media one more time, because it's a serious issue. Yeah. So they don't even know the long-term effects, right, of all this stuff. And, you're releasing dopamine. Every time you go on your phone to look through your feed or whatever, you're actually getting a rush of dopamine every time you do it. So it's just like a drug, right? So, social comparisons, right? So I think there's a saying, comparison is the thief of all joy, right? And I do it myself. Sometimes I compare myself to people, and I get sucked into it, and I'm like comparing. It's not always about physique, it's just whatever it could be. It could be anything, like business, whatever, and you compare, and you get sucked into that negative mindset, like, why aren't I at that level? Why haven't I got there? And then you start feeling sorry for yourself, right? But people on a daily basis, they're not aware. Get the app moment again, right? But they're not aware they're doing it, right? It's the social comparison. So that's got to be. I can't think of a long word. I was trying to think of a clever word there. That's got to be making it worse. That's got to be making it worse though, with the anxiety and the mental health. It can't be making it better.
It's the biggest aggravator. Really,
wow.
It's a number one thing. If you're logging on, you're seeing how much better everyone's life is. That is so anxiety-inducing. Along with things like email notifications, that constant pinging, reminding you are not enough, right? And this is the feeling we have, is that we just go, I'm not enough. Compared to everyone else has got this. So this kind of makes me think of things like body image, right? So I think there's this misconception when it comes to how do I love my body, or how do I even think my body's okay, right? Like, there's this misconception that I have to change what my body looks like so that I like it. That if I get more muscles, if I get more toned, if I lean up, then I'm going to like my body. That's bullshit, to be honest. All that happens when you get to that point is you find one more thing that you don't like about your body, right?
It's never ending.
At your peak, you're like most ripped, as you said.
Yeah.
Were you ever like, I have made it, I am perfect.
No.
As I am, I'm great.
Definitely not. That's the message. You're literally right on the same lines here, because I say this on pretty much every episode. That is what it was for me. It was all about the physique and the aesthetics, right? So until you shift the reasons why, and that takes a little bit of time, but I was focused on how I looked, right? So it was like, it was a serious like body dysmorphia issue I had, right? Because like you said then, I would get shredded. I would be like in this incredible shape, but it still wasn't enough. There were still areas I wanted to work on. I was still comparing myself to others, because when you do competitions, obviously you're on stage, you're being critiqued against other people non-stop, right? It's comparisons, exactly, like at its finest. But then you're following these people as well then, right? So you're looking and you're like, oh my God, like he looks... And then you're just getting into that mindset. So it's until I got to the point, and like you said, it doesn't happen overnight. Until I got to the point where I was eating intuitively, and then I was in tune, listening to my body in terms of what training I need to do. Now that's an art as well now, because like you said about intensity. For example, like I know today, I wanted to do, my routine right now entails me today to do like a big intense session, but I know I'm a little bit tired and my body's not up to it, so I most likely won't do it. It's still a battle, but that's just an example that, like, listening to my body, like, it's going to do me more harm than good, really, going to the gym, hammering myself, or doing a big session when my body's not up to it. I'm better off just doing some mobility, you know?
This
that's
is a
just
compromise.
one example.
It's a little compromise that you make to be more consistent.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, what we were saying before about the body image thing is that you were ripped, right? You're like peak physical format, and it still wasn't enough.
No.
Never. So it's body, liking your body isn't about changing what you look like, but it's about changing your mind. Because until you accept that you are enough as you are in your current format, it doesn't matter how much weight you lose or what you look like, it'll never be enough.
Never be enough.
So it's actually a decision that you make. You know, it's not a body change. It's like you can decide right now, I'm sick of not being okay with my body. I'm sick of always having an issue. And I don't want to spend the rest of my life hating my body. You know, I have clients who are 7 years old who have never loved their body, have always hated what they look like at no point. And they look at photos now of when they were like young and they go, I looked amazing. Why couldn't I see it?
Wow.
You know, wouldn't it be good if we just like stop right now and go, listen, I'm not going to be perfect. My body isn't meant to be perfect. It's flawed, but it's okay, and it's worthy of being accepted just as it is right now.
In fact, like, I would say, like, imperfection is perfection, right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, like the ego, I've done an episode on this before, like the ego is so powerful, right? It can be your best friend or your worst enemy.
Yeah.
So it always wants everything to be impeccable. You're always going to get that right. It's normal because it's keeping you alive, right? Yeah. But nothing's ever going to be perfect. You're never going to get your perfect physique, right? But it's like now, for example, I'm pretty much in the shape of my life now, but I'm not thinking about it. It's just because I'm looking after my body. So the more optimal, I'm appreciating my body as well. And the more optimal level, the better state of health you can get in mentally and physically, then the better you're going to look. It's as simple as that.
Yeah,
but
it all aligns.
It all aligns, but if you can just make that, like, not the top priority, you know, when you get to the point where that's not your top priority, that's when things start falling into place.
When you like your body, when you love your body, you want to exercise.
Yes.
Because you do it for your body, not because you hate your body, not because your body's not good enough. That always feels like a chore. I have to exercise. But when you actually genuinely like your body, you want to take care of it.
Definitely.
So almost, you know, it sounds ridiculous, but accepting your body, accepting it in its imperfection is actually going to help you be healthier.
For sure.
And do those things and do it for the right reasons and do it to feel good, and then naturally you're going to look good. So a lot of people go, I'm going to look good and then I'm going to feel good. No, do it the other way around.
Yes.
I never set out to lose 20 kilograms. I set out to feel good, and this is where I'm at.
Yeah, it's a side effect.
It's a side effect.
Definitely,
it's just like a nice to have, but it's definitely not the be all and end all. You can't judge your happiness based on what you look like.
No, for sure.
You're going to fail.
Not at all. Wow, we've covered a lot of stuff here. I'm going to have to have a look at my little notes here. I think we've covered it all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't even know how long we've been going for, but just one or two more questions, right? But I was just going to say, there was one thing I wanted to ask you then that you mentioned, but maybe it'll come back to me. About, this is a bit off topic, but do you know cooking food? I'm just intrigued myself. When you cook food, what's the best way, like, have you got any tips in terms of, do you ever think about, this is probably like it's not important, but the best way to cook food, for example,
Food's always important. Okay?
Yeah, it is always important.
Yeah,
I know.
It is a priority.
It is always a priority, but it's not one of the big rocks in terms of like how you cook it, right? It's just, well, I suppose it is important, but just for a starter, getting vegetables in and having more healthy food is the most important part, right? Not so much how you cook it, but any tips in terms of like to retain the nutrients and stuff for like cooking food? Or?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You know, you're going to have things like boiling is probably going to be the worst way because you're going to lose all your nutrients, they're going to leach out, they're going to go into the water, and so you're kind of, you know, it's an issue because a lot of old people typically boil things these days, so that's not ideal. Personally, the way I like to cook is the way that's going to get more flavour. So if my vegetables taste good, I'm more incentivized to actually eat them, then I'm going to get more bulk, which means I'm going to get more nutrients. So it's a slightly different way of looking at it, but the best way to cook for the most nutrients is the way you enjoy it the most. So if you like it on the barbecue. If you like it roasted, roast it. So that is, whatever you can do more consistently / more enjoyably is going to win overall.
There we go.
Because you're just going to keep consistently doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
And salad dressing actually helps you absorb nutrients. So all of your A's,
so like
B, and K.
vinegar type stuff. Is it like?
Wait, So there are some nutrients which are fat soluble, A, D, E, and K.
That's right,
and you can't absorb them if you don't have fat in your diet. So when you're having a salad dressing, it has a lot of those A, D, E, and K nutrients. Having the oil is actually going to mean that your body can absorb them. So if you're just going for a vinegar, you might be selling yourself short because your body can't even access those nutrients. So it's an argument for why going, listen, adding in a little bit of fat isn't a bad thing. Adding in, you know, especially things like extra virgin olive oil that's been shown to have so many good benefits.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look at the Mediterraneans. That was actually one of my questions. I might as well get into it now. The Mediterranean paradox, right? So obviously most of them have like, you know, a glass or two of red wine every day with their meals, right? This is a daily thing. They have heaps of olive oil, heaps of fats and oils, right? Fish, lots of vegetables, that goes without saying. But what's really fascinating is they haven't got a chronic illness epidemic. But a lot of them are actually overweight. They've still got quite a lot of people out there overweight, but they don't have the diabetes to go with it like we do here. And there's probably numerous factors which come into that. Obviously, it's lifestyle and environment and all the other things you're doing when you're not eating. But when it comes to actually what you're putting into your body, I mean, it's really interesting because because if you notice, they'll sit down. It's a really social thing. They sit down, they're relaxed, you know. Whereas in Westernized countries like, you know, Australia, where I'm from, the UK, everything's always rushed, we're always on the move, and apparently it's related to the fact that Westernized countries, when we're eating and we're rushing and we're on the go, we're high stress levels, right? So we've got cortisol in the system at the same time as insulin, and that is a contributor to the diabetes and stuff. So
totally dulls the leptin, gets the ghrelin fired up. All these things happen. So have you heard of blue zones?
Yes, I have.
Right. Okay. Cool. So just for all the folks playing at home, blue zones are where people live to be 100 at a much higher rate than anywhere else in the world. There's one in Okinawa in Japan.
And Sardinia? Is it Sardinia? Yeah, I remember these two. Yeah.
So basically they assessed all, I think it's 7 or 9, I actually don't remember, but it's all these different places and they found common threads. So what are all these places doing in common that can show us what can we learn from them? A, they're always having, as you said, the community aspect. So having that engagement with people and actually communicating and not being on social media while you're eating your food is number one.
That's it. Rest and digest, isn't it? You know?
Rest and digest, that's exactly it. Number 2 is eating so much more vegetables than the rest of us, and they actually have relatively, not low protein diets, but none of them are having supplements. They're eating fish, they're eating a little bit of meat pretty infrequently, probably like once a month, once a fortnight. That's pretty infrequently for us. They are having alcohol because they're relaxed and they're enjoying. Life's about enjoyment for them.
For sure, yeah.
But they're getting heaps of fruit, heaps of veggies, and the one common food that they all share is legumes.
Legumes, yeah.
So for me, I think this is like the superfood that no one eats nearly enough of. Fiber, bulking, it is going to fill you up. It is super cheap. It is so underrated. It's got protein in it. It's got fiber in it. Dietitians don't even know how to categorize it because is it a vegetable or is it a grain? What is it?
It's just nutrient dense.
It's just amazing. Totally.
But like, have you ever come across anyone? Because I've looked into like legumes and stuff like that. Sometimes, well, it's becoming quite common for people to have like immune reactions and have like because there's a certain kind of compound in there or something.
Yeah. So there's some people who have like IBS symptoms to it. So there's 2 things categorized. Some people just cannot tolerate it. They get gut pain. It feels terribly uncomfortable. But what happens when you do have legumes in your diet and you haven't been eating them is you do produce more gas. This is just a natural byproduct of your body getting healthier. This is like a fermentation process that's happening. After a few weeks of eating more legumes, your body will get used to it and you won't produce the gas like you previously had. And you'll notice as well, it doesn't smell. It's not like offensive or anything. So it's just about getting into the routine of doing it. Now, if you find you do get all those like really negative symptoms, like you're in pain and it's just not right for you, who cares if everyone eats it who lives to be 100? If it doesn't work for your body, it doesn't work for your body.
Exactly,
The number one rule when it comes to nutrition is to listen to your body. Like, it doesn't matter if this works for me and, you know, it worked for him. It doesn't work for you, you cut it out. So give it a go. Be a bit patient with it and just kind of go with a smaller amount. Canned legumes are going to be a bit easier to tolerate than having the dried stuff. And just start with a small dose every, about 3 times a week. And just see how you go. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
So you're talking about like beans and all these kind of things, like
beans,
lentils.
chickpeas, lentils, whole bean mix. Your own kind of baked beans, black beans when you're doing some Mexican kind of thing.
Of course,
It's
iron as well, right? Is it like there's an abundance of nutrients, but
non-heme iron, so it's less absorbable than a red meat, but it is definitely still there.
Cool.
But main thing you're going to be getting there is fiber. So you're going to notice that your digestion speeds up, your metabolism speeds up, you feel full.
Yeah.
I I can say
You can go
so
on
many.
forever,
I could go on forever with
No worries.
ideas.
And you said about meat then, right? Literally, we're going to cap it off now, right?
Yes.
Meat. I eat red meat probably about 2-3 times a week or something, yeah, and it makes me feel good, right?
Yeah.
So if you can get good quality, like it has to be good quality, grass-fed,
Yeah.
you know. And obviously, you're talking about fats and stuff earlier. There's certain types of fats and iron and stuff, yeah, in red meat and all the rest of it. Again, I could go on forever, but it is kind of nutrient dense and like it is good for you, right? So I mean, what I'm trying to get at is how much meat do you have, for example, in terms of like red meat and just meat in general?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Like everything, broccoli and chicken can be really good for you, but if you have it every single day, not good for you. Same thing with red meat. It's nutrient dense, it's good for you, but having way too much of it, definitely not good for you.
It's like anything, man.
To be honest, I personally I try only eat meat once a day. So maybe it's lunch or dinner, but then if it's dinner, then it's a vegetarian thing for lunch.
Okay.
As an example, so
once a day, so regardless, meat, fish, anything, just once a day? Okay.
Once a day, yeah.
Cool.
And then what I do is I try and work on 100-gram serving size.
Okay.
Which is tiny. It's
Yeah.
really small.
Yeah.
So
that is tiny, yeah.
For me,
That's
it's
raw weight, yeah? That's
raw weight.
Wow.
So
okay.
that's about stretching that protein
Yeah,
and getting that and eating less meat. So for me, I'll eat red meat twice a week.
Yeah.
I'll do the rest of it chicken, fish, and other options, but it's about pulling down on that serving size when I do have it.
Okay.
It's not, and that works for me. For me, I get enough iron by doing that. If you need slightly more, you need slightly more. I just think there's an overconsumption of meat in general. You save so much money. Plus the environmental aspects of eating a whole lot less meat. It's very trendy these days. You need a little bit of meat, you don't need that much meat. Just like the centenarians, the people who live to be 100, that's about how much meat they're having.
Yeah, exactly.
They're probably eating less meat than that, actually.
Yeah.
They're not eating very much at all.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
It's an evolution thing, isn't it? Like, we wouldn't always, like, if you think about, like, back in the day, 70, let's say 100,000 years ago, we wouldn't have the luxury of having meat when we wanted it. Meat would be like...
Every
meat,
day.
Yeah. Oh, meat would be like a godsend, wouldn't it?
Once a
That
month, if we're lucky.
You have to hunt an animal, you have to expend all that energy to kill it, right? I know, sorry to the vegetarians out there, whoops. But, you know what I mean? It's like a luxury, isn't it?
Absolutely. And today, it's like an everyday thing, and we're just so frivolous with how we treat animal, like, product as well.
Yeah.
When you eat animal, be conscious of it. I personally don't think you need to cut it out completely, but just like what they show is getting a lot of variety is really beneficial, being mindful of your meat consumption, as you said, making good choices when you can. This is not hard, but this is just one more step in the process. So if you're ready to take it, take the next step. If not, maybe try adding legumes in.
That's great. And so just what I was going to ask, and the last thing now is three like tips you have for the listeners, or maybe to be more specific, is there anything like that you have really kind of struggled with in terms of giving people advice and stuff, because we're living in a world now, right, where there's more, like I said, there's more information available to us than there ever has been, right?
Yeah.
So we're almost like snowed under with it. So is there anything, any obstacles and challenges you faced trying to get your message across to people?
Yeah, I find the whole superfood thing really quite tough, because I feel like people get distracted by, I should eat this superfood, yet they're not getting the basics right. Like, if you're not having 5 serves of veggies a day, but you want to add acai into your life, like, that's such a waste of money and such a waste of your willpower. Your willpower, you only have so much in a day before you're going to use it all up.
Exactly.
Use it all up and trying to eat acai for breakfast, and by dinner time, you're like face planted into your kitchen, right? Like, prioritize what matters, and don't get distracted by things like chia and all that other kind of stuff until you're ready for it.
Yeah.
So that's like my biggest challenge. When people go, I really want to be healthy. That's not the solution. Fruit and veg. That's it.
There we go.
There's a whole lot of people who think that they know exactly how to do nutrition, and that there's one way to do nutrition, and if it's not my way, then it's not right. That's ridiculous.
That is ridiculous,
like as I said, like there's bio individuality. We're all so different. So if anyone you're following on social media claims that they know what they're talking about and this is the only way to do it, like, they are a fraud. Unfollow, dislike, because honestly, there's so many ways to be healthy, and you just don't need to just do one way. So yeah. That's probably like the two things that probably like the two biggest barriers to getting nutrition information across is...
It's all the fads out there.
Fads.
Yeah, it's tribes, isn't it? It's like tribes of people who all get together, and it's like this or nothing, isn't it? It's the same, and that's one of the main issues, isn't it? It's like all different camps, right? CrossFit, F45, vegans. Why does it have to be like that? Why can't it just be, like what works? Like, you just learn what works for you. You have to learn yourself. I mean, that's me thinking to a certain extent. You have to kind of apply yourself. and question everything, isn't it?
It's like a political part. It's like political parties.
Yeah.
Everyone's kind of got these really passionate viewpoints.
Yeah.
Why can't we all just agree to
I know.
agree?
Focus
really?
on health.
That's it. Yeah, we're all doing the same thing, aren't we?
There we go. And that's it. Spot on. Awesome. And where can the listeners find you anyway, Lyndi?
Check me out. I guess you can Google the Nude Nutritionist, which is what I'm known as, but make sure you've got really clear, don't image search that. Just
yeah, don't put it on images. Yeah,
that might
keep
be
it on.
bad for you, or it might be good for you, either way. But
That's a bit hit and miss though, isn't it? Yeah, I'm not sure what you might find on that this day.
It's lyndycohen.com, nude_nutritionist on Instagram, Facebook,
Cool.
the Nude Nutritionist. Lots of recipes. I share lots of healthy recipes and general tips for body image and anxiety and eating well and finding the balance without the obsession.
Awesome. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. I wish I brought my notepad. I really do now. I wish I could have made some notes. I was learning quite a bit.
We'll go for a walk. We'll chat it out.
Let's do it. I'll put it on my phone. No, but don't forget to give me a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. I'll send you out 5 stars. I'll send you out a free training program, free abdominal training program. And that's it in a nutshell. That's all wrapped up then.
Bye.
Thanks again. Bye-bye.